Welcome to this Tutor2U Sociology topic video on social inequality for Cambridge OCR A-Level Sociology. In this video we're going to look at the work of Margaret Benston on unpaid domestic labour. When studying gender inequality, one of the central debates is whether women's oppression is mainly rooted in patriarchy, in capitalism, or in a combination of the two. Margaret Benston's The Political Economy of Women's Liberation offered a striking intervention into this debate. As a Marxist feminist, Benston argued that women's unpaid domestic labour is central to the functioning of capitalism. Her famous claim is that women's work in the home, cooking, cleaning, childcare and providing emotional support, plays a hidden but crucial role in sustaining the system. By carrying out this labour for free, women reduce costs for capitalists and maintain the workforce. Benston was writing in the early 1970s, during the rise of the second wave feminist movement. This was a period where women were entering the labour market in greater numbers, but still shouldered the bulk of domestic responsibilities. At the same time, sociology and economics often ignored or dismissed domestic labour as unimportant. Benston challenged both mainstream sociology and male-dominated Marxist theory by arguing that capitalism depends fundamentally on the unpaid work of women in the private sphere. At the heart of Benston's argument lies a radical claim. Women's unpaid domestic labour directly subsidise capitalism. Through providing meals, cleaning, childcare and emotional care, women ensure that male workers are healthy, rested and productive. This effectively saves capitalists the cost of welfare or support services. Women also reproduce the next generation of workers by raising children and socialising them into the norms of work and discipline, again providing capitalism with future labour power at no cost to employers. In addition, women act as a reserve army of labour. They can be drawn into employment during times of labour shortage, such as wartime or economic growth, and pushed back into domestic roles during recessions. Their dual role makes them a particularly flexible source of labour for capitalism. In this sense, domestic work is not a private or individual matter, but a structural feature of the capitalist economy. Capitalism thrives precisely because this work remains invisible, unpaid, and taken for granted. Benston's analysis fits within the tradition of Marxist feminism, which combines Marxist ideas about class exploitation with feminist concerns about gender oppression. Like Marxists, she sees inequality as being rooted in capitalism, but like feminists, she emphasises the specific role of patriarchy and the oppression of women. By linking the two, she shows that women's inequality cannot be understood without analysing how capitalism and patriarchy work together. This distinguishes her work from liberal feminism, which focuses on more legal and political reform, and from radical feminism, which views patriarchy as a system even more fundamental than class. Benston's work is theoretical rather than empirical. Drawing on Marxist analysis, she explored how domestic labour fits into the wider structures of capitalism. One of its strengths is that it provides a powerful framework for linking women's oppression to economic structures, highlighting the importance of unpaid labour in ways that had previously been ignored. However, a key weakness is the lack of empirical data, and critics argue that her analysis is abstract and risks overgeneralising women's experiences. Benston's main findings can be summarised clearly. Firstly, unpaid domestic work benefits capitalism by keeping labour costs low. Secondly, women reproduce the workforce both biologically and socially. And thirdly, women's dual role as a reserve army of labour makes them particularly useful to capitalism. She also stresses that women's oppression is not just cultural or ideological, but structural and economic. Benston's work has several strengths. It drew attention to the crucial importance of domestic labour, which had been ignored by male sociologists and economists. It also provided a structural explanation of gender inequality by linking it directly to capitalism. Her ideas remain relevant today, with ongoing debates about unpaid care work, childcare costs, and the persistence of the gender pay gap. However, there are also weaknesses. Her theory can be criticised for being overly deterministic, as it sometimes suggests that women oppression is entirely caused by capitalism, without recognising patriarchy as an independent system of inequality. It also overlooks diversity, as not all women's experiences of domestic labour are the same, something highlighted by black feminists and postmodernists. Furthermore, since the 1970s, women's participation in paid employment has increased dramatically, raising questions about whether a model fully applies to contemporary society. Despite these criticisms, Benston's ideas remain highly relevant. Around the world, unpaid domestic and care work is still disproportionately carried out by women, even among those in full-time employment. Many governments also rely on families, and particularly women, to provide care for children, the elderly and the sick. And Benston's framework helps explain why the gender pay gap persists. Women's dual role in paid and unpaid work restricts their career opportunities and limits their advancement compared to men. For Cambridge OCR sociology students, Benston's work can be used in multiple ways. She provides excellent examples of how Marxist feminists explain the relationship between capitalism and women's equality. She provides excellent examples of how Marxist feminists explain the relationship between capitalism and women's inequality. Her ideas can also be used to evaluate different feminist perspectives, such as radical or liberal feminists, or to discuss whether gender inequality is best explained by patriarchy or capitalism. She's also useful in debates about whether class or gender is the most significant source of inequality in society. In conclusion, Benston's The Political Economy of Women's Liberation made a major contribution to Marxist feminist theory by showing how capitalism depends on women's unpaid labour. By highlighting the economic and structural dimensions of gender inequality, she forced sociology to take domestic work seriously as an object of study. While her work is sometimes abstract and has been criticised for ignoring diversity, it remains a vital framework for understanding why women continue to face unequal burdens in both the household and the workplace. That concludes this Tutor2U Sociology topic video on social inequality for Cambridge OCR A-Level Sociology. In this video we looked at the work of Margaret Benston and unpaid domestic work. Thanks for watching.